Good morning, guys. Final day here in Portugal. Unfortunately, the weather isn't quite on our side today, but it's still nice getting out some nice relaxing steps before meal one. So today we're going to take you through a full delts and arm session. There's going to be some good pointers in that. So stay tuned, because who doesn't want big delts and arms? So today saw a new low again, which was nice. Especially after having that food increase, which I spoke about in a previous video, which played a little bit of mental challenge with me. So nice to see the weight coming down, and by far the leanest yet as well. Flat as a pancake this morning, which again on prep it causes mental challenges, because you haven't eaten, you haven't got any water in you, and look, in the morning the look isn't what you want, but getting flat is very much what is needed at this point to pull off the body fat. So we shall see you in the gym, but before that, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll keep banging out the content and bringing you along on the journey. All right, we are here in Mr. Big Evolution for a nice, juicy delts and arm session. So this session is pretty much going to take off everything you need to grow some nice, thick delts, biceps, and triceps, pretty much covering all bases. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a dumbbell lateral raise, which is going to be short and range challenge. We're then going to go on to a press, which is going to take off the compound for front and side delts. Then we're going to move on to a cuffed cable lateral, which is going to take off the lengthened portion of the side delt, which we'll talk you through how to set up. And then we've got 2 movements of biceps, 2 movements of triceps, both taken off, lengthened and shortened. So pretty perfect delts and arm session. The only thing it is missing off is the rear delts, which we tend to do in the pull session. So I'm feeling the new low today, definitely feeling it. This session's going to be interesting, but the only thing to it is to do it and to get after it. So let's get stuck into it. Okay, so starting with the dumbbell lateral, we've actually got 2 sets on this. We have brought volume down throughout prep to manage fatigue, but 2 sets to absolutely send it as much as you can send it on some laterals. So I'm doing it seated. It doesn't really matter too much whether you do it standing or sitting. I just find that actual seated dumbbell laterals keep that a little bit more strict. There's no hip action going on. So what we're looking to do here, and a common mistake people make when they're doing laterals, is they actually raise straight out to the side, when what you actually want to be doing is your hands slightly in front of you. The reason being for that, the way this side delt wraps around the shoulder, you're going to be in a much better position to actually challenge it by going out diagonally. Whew. So, dumbbell lateral, you'll see, as I start fatiguing in that set, I can't get all the way to the top. So this is gonna be heavily challenged in the short range. So what I mean by that is, when the dumbbell's up there, shoulder is contracted, it's gonna be the greatest challenge, it's gonna be hardest there. So with these, I actually really like them. A lot of people with dumbbell laterals, they kind of write them off and say you should just do cables. I kind of like a combination of like the old school and the new school. So I would do these, but I'd definitely pair them with a cable lateral as well. Again, focus more on the lengthen position, which we're gonna do after this. But I like them, That feel of just throwing the dumbbells about. So don't be scared to do stuff that is considered old school. So something a lot of people struggle with when they're doing their side laterals is, number one, actually challenging their side delt effectively, and number two, feeling their traps too much. Now, your traps have to move in order for your arm to lift, but you can do it in a way which you are gonna be smashing your side delts a little bit more and making sure you are actually hitting your side delts rather than your front delts. So two kind of cues you wanna focus on with this is making sure your knuckles are pointing the floor. And then what you wanna do from there is imagine you're scraping your knuckles across the floor and painting them up the walls. So I'm really thinking about stretching away from me, which is gonna put a lot of tension through the side delt, as opposed to just shrugging up like this, which is maybe why you're feeling your traps a lot. And then the other thing you really wanna focus on is making sure that you keep that thumb down, because a big mistake people make is they tend to rotate back as they come up, and if you look what happens when I do that, my shoulder rotates backwards and my front delt is on top. Now, whatever's kind of on top and is working against the force is gonna be in a better position to actually do the work. So if I'm doing that, my front delt's gonna be working, whereas if I keep my thumb down, the side delt's gonna be on top and it's gonna be challenged the most when you're doing your laterals. Okay, next up, shoulder press. So you'll notice with the bench setup, I've actually got it on a little bit of an incline. So what I see a lot of people doing, because they're thinking shoulder press, they think it has to be upright. And what tends to happen when they have it upright is they end up doing this massive arch anyway to put themselves in a position where they're able to press from, because a lot of us bodybuilders, we don't have the range to actually press directly overhead. It's just an uncomfortable position to press from. So rather than putting the bench completely upright and then having to arch your back to get into that position, just put the bench on an incline. You're still going to be challenging the delts. The delts are going to still be doing the majority of the work. Yes, you may pull in a little bit more upper chest, but who has got enough upper chest? No one. So it's definitely not a bad thing. So just putting it on a bit more of an incline is going to be a lot more stable to press from and a lot more comfortable. And you're going to be able to do a lot more kind of output and get more out of the movement. Get my steps in today, boys. So another tip that you can take into your presses, and again, what a lot of people do in terms of putting themselves in an uncomfortable position and not the strongest position to press from, is having your arms directly out to the side. It's going to put a lot of stress on your shoulders. It's not going to be the most comfortable position and the most stable position to press from. So all you need to do is just bring your elbows in front of you slightly, and that is going to be a lot more stable, probably going to suit your flexibility a lot more as well. We're going to go with the express warm-up on this. 2 warm-up sets and straight in. Because I'm fucked. And the absolute key to you getting a solid working set in on the shoulder presses is the kick up. So don't try and like curl the dumbbells up. You're gonna mess your shoulders up. It's gonna take a lot of energy. So what you actually need to do is just get some momentum, rock forward, and then just kick it up nice and powerful, straight there, and then you're into pressing. It's hot. I like how heavy they felt when I was carrying them over. So I think at this point now, based off how that felt, free weights in terms of presses, they need to go. The stability when you're dieting down, it does reduce, and that was one of the main things affecting that. Then you can see how shaky I was, because your waist is just getting smaller, you're lighter, and you don't have as much ability to stabilize as you did in the off season. So in terms of like being 4 weeks out now from just like trying to get a decent stimulus while not getting injured, I'm definitely going to be switching to a machine-based press next week, just so that I've got external stability and I'm not having to work so hard to keep myself stable on that, because that didn't feel good. So changes need to be made to that for sure. Was a better set. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to some more laterals, which, considering we've already done it, may seem a little bit pointless. Same movement, right? But we're actually changing the setup now so that this is going to be more challenging, or the heaviest, when your arm's by your side. So the dumbbell lateral, when you were coming out here, it was hardest there. Now what we're going to be doing with this is setting this up so that the force is coming from that way, which means it's going to be the heaviest there and actually drop off a little bit as we come to the top. So that way we're challenging the full range of the delt, which is what you need to do when you're trying to grow some nice boulder shoulders. This though, I used this yesterday for rear delts, and it's going to be the heaviest, well, it is the heaviest cable machine in the world. So I might be using one plate. So when we're doing this, the exact same principles apply as to what we were saying downstairs with the dumbbell laterals. Keep them knuckles pointing the floor. Scrape your thumb across the floor and paint them up the walls. And you want to come out diagonally. Now, why are we using cuffs? People will say that, oh, just hold the handle. The old school folks. But all a cuff's going to do is take out the wrist, which can potentially be a weak link. So you're essentially being able to produce more force and making the movement better, which always blows my mind why people argue against it. The old school guys saying, oh, just hold the handle, stop being a pussy. It's like you're making the movement better. It's like saying, why don't we still use horse and cart? Because a car gets you there faster, right? Actually feels all right. But laterals can be really hard to progress, and a lot of my clients will say the same thing to me sometimes. They're like, you know, let's say they're working in like a 10 to 15 rep range, for example, and they'll always get to 15 and then try and jump up a plate. And then they struggle to even get into the 10 to 15 on that next weight up. And it's because like a couple of kilos when you're working a small muscle group and taking it away from your body, it is a big jump. You're adding a big percentage to what you were doing. So when it comes to building muscle, the rep range you're doing doesn't really matter. Like the most important thing is achieving effective reps or taking it to failure, right? So the point where the rep starts to slow down. So if you're doing laterals and like you get 10, 15 and you can't jump up to that next weight, just keep working up the rep range. So like instead of like when you get to 15 increase the weight, just try and work it up towards like 20, 21, still take the failure. And by the time you've worked up to that 20, 21, you're probably then strong enough and ready to increase the weight. So don't think you always have to increase the weight just because you've got a rep range to work in. You can go past that rep range and you'll still build muscle. When you're doing a movement like this, you want to make the most out of the fact that it is most challenging in the length and range. So when you get to the bottom, take a pause, spend some time there, make it hurt. But also as well, then this is what a lot of people do, is they'll come down to here and they'll rest their arms on the side. Well, if you're doing that, you're taking tension off the shoulder. So actually what you want to do is stop just outside so you're not completely resting, keep that tension on. Pause and then push into it. Make sure you're keeping all the tension on the side delt. Oh boy, that fatigue catches up with you quick time in a prep. Whew. Can't wait to go on the beach. Get me in that sea, bro. Coke Zero. That's the life. Okay, that is delts done. We're on to the arm portion of this session now. So we're going to be starting off with an incline dumbbell curl. This is going to be the more lengthened focused bicep movement. So what we want to do, similar to what I said with the lengthened focused delt movement, lateral movement, is actually make sure we're spending time in a position where it's going to be most challenging. So a lot of people, when they're doing curls, they won't come to a full extension. This is going to be the most challenging when you're fully extended. So when you're doing an incline dumbbell curl, you want to make sure every time you come down, you get a full stretch. And the best way to make sure you get a full stretch is to tense your triceps. So coming down to that position, tense your triceps and your biceps will stretch like mad. And you should be able to do that every single rep. A good 2-second pause before curling back up. So big challenge to lengthen position. When I'm saying lengthen, I'm talking about like the muscle fully stretched. And it's also going to take out momentum to make sure you are not cheating. And that's the key, not just throwing around as much weight as you can, putting as much tension through the biceps as you possibly can. Oh. So when you're going throughout your set, you want to get into slow moving reps. So on the concentric part of the lift, you want to get to a point where it's slowing down unintentionally, but that is the only thing that should change speed. So in terms of the pause down the bottom, pause at the top, and on the way down in the eccentric portion, they should all stay the same from start to finish. So that does take skill. It does take kind of time to learn how to kind of keep composure in your sets and keep that control throughout, because what you'll see people doing when they're relatively new to this is when it starts to hurt, they'll fall to pieces and they'll just start dropping through the air. But what we need to remember, we're trying to generate as much tension as possible. And where we're going to generate the most tension is through that eccentric portion, and we want to keep the reps standardized. So from a point of putting as much tension on the biceps as possible, but also as well, keeping your reps standardized. So I think a lot of people tend to like get caught up in that logbook and like drop just to make it a little bit easier to get an extra rep. You're not then actually progressing, you're making things easier. So keep the eccentric and the pauses the same. The only thing that changes speed is that concentric portion unintentionally. Now this one, because I'm kind of trying to challenge more like the contracted position, make it hardest there, what I'm actually looking to do is I'm actually allowing some elbow lift at the very end. So what I'll do is I'll keep my arm kind of fixed, curl as high as I can, and then at the very last moment, I'm going to give a little elbow lift. And what that will allow me to do is crush my forearm into my bicep, and that is how you're going to get a really, really good bicep contraction. So don't actually be scared to just lift that elbow a little bit, but make sure you're not actually moving the weight by just swinging your arms forward. Oh, good God. When you're doing your curls, don't just curl to the top. Like with every arm movement you're doing, especially arms, make it hurt as much as you can. So when you come to the top, don't just get to the top. Get to the top and fucking squeeze your bicep as hard as you can. And obviously you're gonna activate your muscles more. So building that mind to muscle connection is gonna be important to building some big pipes. When it comes to training your arms, you need to train with intensity. And I think sometimes it's done as an afterthought, right? It's usually banged on to the end of a session, maybe losing a little focus by that point, and you're not attacking things as well as you could be. Usually, if your arms aren't growing, it's down to one of two things. Execution, so actually controlling it as we just spoke about, intensity, or a combination of the two. So you have to stay switched on throughout your session, and probably one of the easiest ways to make sure you're actually progressing and providing a new stimulus to your arms every session and training hard enough is use a logbook. It seems like that's almost forgotten now about for arms. They're the same as any other muscle group. They need to be trained with intensity and they need to be trained with progressive overload. So if you find yourself switching off at the end of your session and not really putting everything into arms, make sure you're logbooking your sets and try and beat reps or weight every single session, and that's going to make sure you're actually training with enough intensity, because you're always trying to beat that logbook and do more over time. Ouch. Last two movements of the session. So I've gone with tricep push down on a bar. Now usually in my sessions it is a cross body cuff press down, but all the close stacks are taken, and I'll be honest, I'm pretty wrecked today and I kind of just want to get my session done. So in terms of like, if you're training at different gyms, it applies the same. Like, you may not have the same machine as you always use. Doesn't mean you like panic or your session's terrible. Match the movement as close as you can, train hard, train to failure, keep the control, and you're gonna be absolutely fine. So when it comes to the press downs, same principles apply. If I'm doing a cuff cross body tricep extension, that's a mouthful, and a bar press down or even a rope push down. So what we're looking for here is to get as much elbow bend as you possibly can. So crushing your forearm into your bicep. And actually what you want to do there is tense your bicep to get a full stretch of the tricep. And you're going to pause there because, as we spoke about in previous videos, you're going to see the greatest response to hypertrophy in that lengthened position. So you want to spend time there, but you also as well want to take up momentum. So you're going to get as much elbow bend as you can, and then from there press down and squeeze your triceps as hard as you can. Now, when you get to the bottom, when you think you're fully extended, extend further. I guarantee you can extend further. And again, squeeze as hard as you can. So one of the biggest tips I can give for growing your arms, and this applies to every single movement you do, is pause when you're in the lengthened position and when you're in the contracted position. If you do that and pair that with intensity and control, you're going to be in a really good position to start growing your arms. Final movement of the session, overhead tricep extension. So if you've hit your tricep press downs hard enough, your triceps are going to be pretty damn smashed by this point. Now, when we're looking like at training muscles, and as we go throughout the session, what happens is essentially it gets harder to get into the contracted position, to contract your muscle. So in terms of like setting up like your tricep training, do a push down to start to really challenge that shortened position, and then finish with something like this, which is going to be a big challenge in the lengthened, to basically like take what's left of the tricep. So when it comes to doing this, what you're going to find is that what you need to do first of all is make sure you pause in that lengthened position, make sure it's effective. But when you're pausing, what you're going to find is it's going to feel really, really heavy. But you need to remember that as you drive up, that weight is going to drop off slightly because it gets lighter and you get stronger as you get to that contracted position. In terms of how the movement's set up, the movement drops off. So pause there, commit to that pause, and then make sure you drive through. And basically on this, just absolutely rinse your triceps for every single bit they've got left. Really good way to make sure that your tricep is fully stretched is to keep your elbow pointing backwards. So you'll have the temptation as it gets harder to drop that elbow, but make sure you push that back of that and you'll feel a really, really good stretch in that tricep. Now, if you're finding that you're doing something like an overhead extension and you haven't quite got the shoulder mobility or it causes pain, you can still work the tricep in a lengthened position. So something you could do is actually put this cable up, and then rather than being in this big stretch position, you can come from behind you and press forward. So you're still going to be working the tricep in a stretch position, but it's going to be a little bit more comfortable on your shoulders. So you can either do that or something like a cross-body tricep extension like that, where you're still getting a big stretch to that tricep. Good evening. This is coming a lot later than planned. I was going to chat to you after the gym, but in all honesty, I was absolutely broken in that session. And I have been all day, to be honest with you. I've been feeling really, really fatigued. And that is a roller coaster of prep. Like yesterday, I was absolutely flying in the session, felt fantastic. And then today was just, it was an absolute drag. Like on paper, it should have been an easier session. It's just delts and arms, but like motivation to kind of be there, it wasn't great. Still got a decent session in, and I had to do cardio after as well because the gym's open later out here on the weekend. So we literally just got that session done, got my cardio done, which unfortunately I had to do in the Stairmaster, which I haven't done all prep, and I'm not doing that again. And then we just went down and sat down the beach for an hour, which is very much needed. So feeling refreshed now. But this break has been huge for sure. Now I've still done work, still done prep, but I'm feeling very motivated to get back into it now and get firing. 4 weeks out and it's time to get it, it's time to bring it in. So super excited. So I hope you enjoyed the delts and arm session. Hope you took a lot away from it. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one.